Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be presenting on Microsoft Learn TV, our new platform for developer learning. I lead Microsoft Developer Division, where I'm responsible for all of our compiler technologies, runtime like .NET, .NET Core, Visual Studio Code, and a number of Azure services. Today, we're going to be talking about Microsoft and VMware partnership, talking about Azure Spring Cloud, and how we're helping developers to be more productive and efficient. I'm joined today by Ajay Patel from VMware. Thank you so much for being here, Ajay.
Real pleasure. Thank you, Julia, for inviting me. From my introduction perspective, I'm Ajay Patel. I run what we call the Modern Application Platform Business Unit, and have had the pleasure of working with Microsoft earlier as part of the infrastructure team. And great to work with Julia in the Spring effort that Pivotal started many years ago.
Yeah, so actually let's talk about the partnership between Microsoft and VMware. Obviously, VMware and Microsoft have been collaborating on quite a few different areas, all the way from infrastructure to developers. My team actually started the Azure Spring Cloud project during the Pivotal acquisition by VMware. What was your role in VMware, and what was your thoughts when you first heard about this joint project between Azure and Microsoft and Pivotal?
Julia, it's if you look at my background, I'm by heritage a middleware and a database guy. And the last 6 years at VMware, I've been doing infrastructure work and working with the Azure VMware solution team. We've been focused on kind of standing up a VMware solution. So when I heard about the partnership and the strength of the Pivotal Microsoft relationship, when Pat approached me to run the Modern Applications Business Unit, it became clear to me that Microsoft was going to be increasingly a more strategic partner, just not at infrastructure, but on application. And I think fast forward today, it's nice to be able to speak to the GA of a lot of the work. I had no credit to take, honestly, the work you and the rest of the Pivotal teams have been doing for the last several years around the Spring community and Microsoft Azure and the development tools. It's great to now have an offering in the market. So it's a culmination of many years of effort for my predecessors that I get to now showcase and talk about.
Oh, but we love the partnership since the acquisition as well. Since you are now leading VMware's modern application development, would you please share with us your vision about what the future holds?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about VMware and where we've come from, we've always been about making infrastructure or resources available freely to application developers. But prior to this, it was very much about being very opaque to what ran on VMware infrastructure, right? It was traditionally what we call infrastructure consolidation, data center technologies. Over the years, now that we've brought with vSphere 7 in particular, we're bringing the power Kubernetes right into the vSphere platform. And so from a VMware perspective, it was more about unlocking the enterprise resources and the private cloud opportunities, right? Particularly. When you looked at the partnership with Microsoft, we really spent a lot of time around this hybrid cloud, where customers want to use the enterprise on-prem technology, but also we're looking at Azure as a great cloud destination. And if you start thinking about some of the technology choices they're having to make as they start to look at this hybrid cloud movement, Spring became clearly a key asset for the customer. And what Spring itself as a community has been doing to evolve from being an MVC framework to really becoming a modern platform. And so for me, as I saw these pieces coming together, and we'll talk a little bit about the Spring Cloud survey that we just did, or Spring survey that we recently did, it became really clear that the ecosystem was looking for a strong solution that leveraged the power of the cloud, the rich set of ecosystem of services that the public cloud, in particular Azure Cloud Services, provides, the tooling and the developer ecosystem that exists today, and the bet they've made in technologies like .NET and Java, and how they move it forward to a microservice sector. So sitting here, you and I now have the pleasure of really delivering a modern experience, right? That gives you the power of the cloud, but allows you to move your Java and existing application around this app modernization motion we're seeing most customers driving to. So to me, the strategy is really built around infrastructure up. How do we make modern Kubernetes-based infrastructure available, either on VMware private cloud or in platforms like Azure Kubernetes Service? And then what is the modern application development experience, what we call path to production? How do we accelerate from idea to production in a rapid DevOps, modern CI/CD technologies manner? And bringing it all together is really where the strength, I think, of these two partnerships is. So pretty excited, aligns very nicely with the VMware strategy and a strong partnership with Microsoft. I couldn't be more happier.
Thank you. Yeah, we're equally excited. And VMware has been showing such a strong commitment to nurturing the Spring ecosystem. So in support of that goal, how are you thinking about further building out the Spring community? Also, the yearly Spring Developer Survey just came out. What are some of the insights that you're seeing?
I mean, the first exciting part about what the Spring community is, it hasn't sat still. Being a legacy Java EE guy, I was always jealous of the Spring community, right? Because Spring, in effect, was a better version of Java EE and the promises we made, right? With the MVC frameworks, et cetera. So now, fast forward, the state of Spring report basically said, look, enterprise developers have bet on Spring. By far, it is the dominant platform for building microservices cloud architecture. So I think it behoves really well for the offering we've been working on, because the developers have spoken with their feet, right? The number of applications starting on Spring Start are just, every few minutes you have a new application starting, which is phenomenal, right? And so if you start thinking about, the survey clearly said they're looking for Spring to become a modern application platform and make it easy to drive microservices. Second interesting point was 70+% plan to use containers and Kubernetes as a deployment platform. But at the same time, they're looking for this abstraction or ease where they don't have to do all the plumbing related to infrastructure. Right? They are developers. They want to focus on business capability, not the services. So when you take the Spring Cloud value, you marry that with the Azure Kubernetes service and all the infrastructure services and the application service you offer, it becomes a phenomenal development platform. So I've always said Spring plus Kubernetes is the new application platform. And I couldn't be happier than the Azure Spring Cloud kind of being a great test bed for someone to come and try easily and start to grow from there. So a lot of the innovation you'll see is first making this easy, but then also starting to add value in kind of the build service that we just introduced together, or the configuration services, so you don't have to write all this YAML file that people don't want to do with an infrastructure, or starting to use public cloud services or Azure services, whether it's a database service or some AI ML services. How do you tie those kind of application and data services much more effectively through things like Spring Data Flow or the Spring API Gateway work we're doing with distributed gateway in Spring. So you're going to see the platform evolve to but encompass the public cloud services and make it easy, but also drive this developer productivity. So I'm very excited across the multiple dimension we see Spring innovating, whether it's React framework all the way to serverless to all the services we just talked about.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, it's also very clear that both VMware and Microsoft, we are very big on supporting open source ecosystem. A lot of our joint work is actually out there in the public on GitHub, in the open. What do you see as the next steps for us to working together to foster an even stronger OSS community?
I think when you look at the philosophy and the principles both companies have, we've always been very much about the ISV community and being open, right? Microsoft has made a significant change over the last 2 decades around your posture on open source, clearly, right? And so if you look at work we're doing in terms of bringing Spring and .NET community together, in terms of in the community effort there around steel toe and where we go there, all the way to if you start to think about just the Spring community and your investment and your support. So thank you for that. And just Spring One, what a phenomenal event. 41,000 plus registered, 10x in terms of size, in terms of excitement. And I would definitely say Microsoft had a big role to play in building that excitement and bringing the community together. So I think one is the Spring community, one is the .NET community. The other one is, we often don't talk about the Kubernetes work we're doing with Brendan and team, right? So it's really, I think it's about how do we bring these two together? How do we make it easy to leverage the power of Kubernetes as an infrastructure and operator platform with the developer flexibility that Spring and Spring Cloud brings, with the services you offer in the cloud? I mean, what a compelling value proposition. So community-led, ISV-friendly, bringing it together, led by innovation. Unlike some of our competitors are trying to get creative in this space by giving trademarks and giving the rights to use trademark, but kind of running a closed governance process. So we're committed to the open community process, right? Being responsible stewards, supporting the innovation and making sure that we drive these innovation across the Kubernetes Spring community and the .NET community. So pretty excited about our commitment. And I would say you will continue to see more of us leaning in here, because I think that's the strength of our partnership. It's backing of the community that makes us so successful.
Yeah, I also think community expect us to keep making even more progress in OSS together.
Absolutely. So I think both of us need to stay committed and deliver with results. Yes. I'm pretty excited about the work we've done so far, and I'm personally committed to driving that harder.
Yeah, same here. And thank you so much for wonderful partnership.
So Julia, I think we've talked quite a bit about what VMware is doing, but I'm envious in terms of the momentum that Azure has driven, and particularly love to hear your thoughts, right, in terms of the work you've been doing with Azure and what's really driving this strong growth, particularly from a developer perspective, right? You hear quite a bit about the infrastructure and the IaaS side, but let's just talk about your perspective on the developer growth that the team's been driving. Right?
Yeah, we really think that there are 4 key reasons that's really driving the significant growth that we see in Azure. The first one being we're really focused on customer obsession as our core value here in Microsoft. And it really kind of shows up in how we listen to our customers to take their feedback and really support what they need with a rapid pace of product innovation. And we're also deeply committed to our partners, such as VMware. And we have many joint services programs with our partners. So that's the first angle. The second angle is what we've been talking about a lot here, developers, our focus on developers. We're very committed to empower developers to build using tools and languages and frameworks that they love and deploy where they want. With our strengths in app dev tools, such as Visual Studio, GitHub, Azure DevOps, we are really the best at delivering the vision of take your idea and make it into code, and take your code and turn it into a cloud application. And that's what we're really empowering developers to do. The third thing that we do really well is I think that we came from a server background. We understand hybrid applications, and then we deliver great experiences across many environments. And that is something that we do super well, from how we can take a cognitive service containers that runs on-prem or in the cloud, or taking something like Azure Arc, where you can take our data services, etc., and then use our managed services like Azure databases for PostgreSQL, either on-prem or in the cloud. The fourth one I think that made a huge difference is our focus on security and compliance. And today we have more compliance offerings than any other cloud providers, and I think that makes a huge difference. I think it's all of these 4 different aspects that really earned us, like over 95% of Fortune 500 companies, they do their innovations on Azure, and it's really spanning every single industry. And so that's what's making a really meaningful differences.
As VMware, we share a lot of the same enterprise-abilities and the need for security and kind of just reliability, availability, and we call enterprise readiness, right? But I'm excited from the work Pivotal and Microsoft did, and now I get the benefit of around the work around Java. So specific to Java, right? How does Microsoft, right, think about Java? I think of C# from my old days, and it's refreshing to see Microsoft adopting and embracing Java so aggressively. Maybe a little bit of a perspective to the Microsoft audience, like why Java? What are you seeing with Java? What are you doing to become a great platform for Java as well?
Yeah, and it's not surprising that any enterprises you walk into, they will have, a Java shop and they will have a .NET shop. That's kind of the standard setup with every enterprise.
Two groups, right?
Right. And then, so, to our earlier mission that we really want to, enable developer to use whatever technology that they're already familiar with, they already love. And Java is such a critical, important component. We want to make sure that we deliver the best possible experiences for running Java workloads on Azure. And that really starts with a lot of different things, starting our general posture with Java to, like we actually did acquisition of jQuery. We're starting to really start contributing in the OpenJDK ecosystem. We have done a huge number of pull requests and supports, improved the performance, and made ARM64 ports, did a lot of work in OpenJDK. We kind of feel like that earned us a little bit of the rights with the Java ecosystem, the open source community, which are so important. And the second key part is that, there are a lot of Java applications which are J2E applications, and people just want to keep lift and shift them into the cloud and keep running them. So we have been partnering with our friends in Oracle and IBM to make sure that their existing Java EE application can run very easily on VM successfully. And then, we also know that Java is a vast ecosystem. So in addition to Java EE and Java, there are also a huge number of telemetry systems, such as the ELK stack people need. So we have deep partnerships to make sure, like Elastic, for example, is running really well on Azure. We have a very easy way to integrate. MySQL and Postgres are very popular among Java devs. So we offer a fully managed MySQL service. that kind of really helps with the Java developers have a great experience on Azure. And then obviously, the Java Spring Cloud is another example of how we're bringing a seamless cloud application development experiences for Java developers. So we're really thinking about from the Open JDK to the broad, all the other middlewares that Java developers are using, making sure that they have an awesome experience on Azure.
Wow, I didn't even know the amount of effort your team has been putting around Java. So it's great to hear. Let's talk more about Azure Spring Cloud. Well, both our teams have been working on this for a while. How would you describe it for someone who's just starting to think about this, right? How does it help the Spring developer? Maybe speak to a little bit of the value and where you see some of the most early traction to the preview process, right?
Yeah, okay. I think that, what your observation earlier about the Spring developers are exactly what we see. Basically, developers, they tell us that, hey, I don't want to deal with infrastructure. I don't really want to focus on writing my business logic. I don't want to have I want to run Kubernetes, but I don't really want to learn Kubernetes. I don't want to learn all of the kube control and all of the nitty gritty of how to, those are operation infrastructure things. We hear that quite often. They don't like the high effort that's required to manage cloud infrastructure. And they don't want to deal with the application lifecycle management. And when something went wrong, how do you troubleshoot the app? Those are the things where, app developers say, simplify my life, please. So with that, we, really set out to build a fully managed services. And Azure Spring Cloud is built on top of Azure Kubernetes services. However, it abstracts away the infrastructure, so you don't have to be thinking about it every day. And where you can really focus on, those applications that live in containers and then the microservice you have built, just as you said. And then, the Azure Spring Cloud built on top of the Spring framework. So it comes with built-in application lifecycle management and monitoring capabilities. We're really taking advantage of the very large portfolio of Spring starters that the ecosystem already, produced to make it very easily, to work with Azure. We have also built specific connectors for Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Active Directory, and Key Vault to make security and identity and database access really simple and straightforward. So overall, we want to give developers a really seamless experiences to kind of build their applications. And obviously, Azure Spring Cloud is jointly engineered, operated, and supported by Microsoft VMware together. So they have two of the powerhouses in tech industry stand behind them on their innovation forward.
It's very compelling. To me, if I were a developer, it's like, where do I get started? So maybe talk a little bit about the Spring Cloud GA announcement, right? What are some of the innovations that they can look to try out as we make this offer now a GA offering? And to your point about the ecosystem, this notion of choice is often what I hear from the Spring state survey as well. The fact we have the largest number of connectors for Spring out of the box available. So that with the Azure services and this ISV ecosystem and the Elk stack you talked about. What a powerful story for any open source developer also looking to put things in production. So maybe I'll give you the floor to talk about kind of the Azure Spring Cloud GA announcement and what are the key offerings or the highlights of the capability.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for having us at Spring One. Just
real pleasure, real pleasure.
Yeah, very recently, and then so that's where we got the opportunity and chance to announce the GA of Azure Spring Cloud. You can now deploy Spring applications into production with really important new enterprise features. And then there's a long set of lists of capabilities. I want to highlight a few, which were, these were definitely customer requested features that we have heard during our preview. Then we worked very hard together with VMware team to put them into production. So an example is VNet integration to enable private networking, which is a huge enterprise
requirement. Yep.
Yeah, and then managed identity support allows secure access to other Azure resources, very important for security. And customer also ask things like custom domain certificate to enable secure SSL, TSL communication. Auto scaling is another huge one where, the same thing, developers like, hey, I don't want to have to worry about the load comes and goes, and please make this dynamic scaling in and out based on metrics and schedules. So, I don't have to be waking in the middle of the night to deal with the load.
The power of cloud at the power trip. Right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry
Indeed. And then the other thing that we hear is on diagnostics, right? So we have enabled distributed tracing and self-diagnostic to allow customers to easily monitor and debug their applications. So these are some of the examples of capabilities that we have discovered during our preview process, and the team worked very hard to build that into the GA offering. So now I think developers are ready to bring all of your Spring applications and really bring the reach with all of the the breadth of the ecosystem, the reliability, and the performance to support any application you intend to build. So please give it a try, and we're both eager to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got a rich roadmap ahead, and would love to see how much traction we can get as this offering gets to market pretty quickly. So thank you for the support, Julia.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. I'm definitely looking. We have a lot of additional plans on the next wave of innovation that's coming together. I cannot wait to kind of do the next joint announcement with the next set of capabilities together.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajay.